What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day because we have GDP data coming out alongside initial jobless claims, and we also have some Fed speakers coming out as the day goes on. So I'm going to break down how all of this may affect the market, what just came out during the FOMC minutes, what's going on with the news and data for the overall market in Tesla, and what I do predict to happen to Tesla for tomorrow. Now, before I break anything down, though, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each valued at up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 6 days. Make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So Tesla was up 1.77% for the day. I did predict that Tesla would get a bit of a bounce and actually close somewhat green. My prediction was around 200, if not 205. That is where Tesla ended up closing. Now, I do want to note that Tesla's a little bit green in the after hours because Nvidia had its earnings and they ended up beating on both revenue and earnings per share. And Nvidia is helping the market pump a bit. However, despite that, from a technical standpoint, we are seeing some bearish signals continuing. And this is from like a more broad perspective. And there is going to likely be more downside to come in the markets over the next couple of weeks, going into like March to April. But before I talk about that and what the charts are telling us, I have to talk about what's going on with the context in the market, the news affecting Tesla, and etc. Firstly, we had the FOMC minutes today. This was basically like a lot of data and information regurgitated by the Fed. And what's interesting is the Fed is going to continue to tighten. The Fed does have to remain hawkish, and inflation is nowhere near the levels the Fed wants it to be at. Now, one of the things that was noted, however, that's a little bit different from before is a few members said they want half a point or 50 basis points to be the increase for March. They want the Fed to be even more aggressive than before to actually secure their place at tightening and slowing down inflation. They believe this is very necessary, very similar to what Bullard said before, and this is very pivotal during a time like this. Now, I want to note that Americans right now are getting into crazy high amounts of debt. Credit card debt is at one of the highest, if not the highest, we've ever seen it at, about $986 billion. I know there is an inflationary aspect to this, but the bottom line is the data tells us most Americans are continuing to get into crazy high amounts of debt because they're struggling to afford the things they would normally pay for in the past. And this is not a sustainable practice. As time goes on, this will be very costly going forward for the economy and etc. As the Fed continues to tighten, as it has done for many decades in the past, we know what tends to happen afterwards, and that is either a recession. And most of the time, we do see recessions almost always when the Fed tightens to this degree. And many signals are pointing at that. And on top of that, we do see the market still show signs of bearish performance. Now, I do believe that there is more downside to come, especially because of the fact that going into the latest rally, the market was super greedy. This actually should be coming down like very soon. This is currently around like 66 right now, but the fear and greed index was very high. Markets were so bullish. Retail was buying at the top. We even saw retail pouring in. I think I have a picture here. $1.5 billion in just a day. That was actually a new record. People were so bullish, and the market is now coming down. So they were buying at the top, and this is just history repeating itself. And I know it's very unfortunate. I know there is likely going to be more downside. Just remember, we also have to look at fundamentals. Now, Nvidia has a pretty decent earnings. This does increase the odds of a decent day tomorrow, but we do have more data as well. We have Alibaba, we have Moderna, and we have Domino's before the market opens tomorrow. Then we have Wish, Carvana, and a bunch of other major companies. I also want to note that before the market opens, we have some huge data coming out. We have GDP price index. This is quarter over quarter. Very important for the estimates of how the economy is performing, and this is very important for recessionary measures. So remember that this is going to be coming 1 hour before the market opens alongside initial jobless claims. The consensus is 200,000. The last time this came out, it was at about 194,000. So this is what we want to see. We want to see more pain in the jobs market, and so far the jobs market is stronger than what the market wants it to be. That's not the best of signs, and Jerome Powell did mention that the Fed is incentivized to tighten more if this does continue. Right, that's what they said in the minutes. We also have the Fed Bostic. I don't know if that's how you say his name properly, but we do have Bostic speaking later on, and if we end up seeing not the best numbers coming out tomorrow, there's an increased probability of the Fed being more hawkish. So this could slow down the market going forward. But this is going to be happening around, I think, almost 12 p.m. No, I think around like 11 a.m. Eastern time. So it's going to be pretty early when the Fed comes out. So just please be ready for that. This will affect how the market moves. Nvidia did end up rising after a slight beat driven by AI chips. Once again, this is leading to more positive sentiment for the tech sector in the markets. It could actually help the Nasdaq and maybe other tech stocks as well, helping the QQQ go up. But overall, like I said, there's so much more coming out than this. Be ready for the data for tomorrow. As for Tesla, we have some very interesting stuff as well. We are seeing some positive headlines, and many analysts are still bullish on Tesla. That does not guarantee anything, though. I just want to note that we are getting some good analysts out there talking about the 220 level for Tesla. Some are saying 225. Others are saying that it's near its top already, but they're very mixed results. From a technical standpoint, there's some analysts saying that Tesla could have a little bit more upside. Once again, this is going to be very dependent on Investor Day and other pieces of data. One good piece of news that came out, though, is right here. That is, Tesla announced a new engineering headquarters in California. I know people have different beliefs about this, different ideas. In my opinion, Tesla's doing what's best for their own company, and that is getting into Silicon Valley. They're going to be taking over an office space in Palo Alto. And this is important because now they're connecting with even more engineers around the area. This is why their new engineering headquarters is going to be right over there. This does not mean they moved their entire headquarters over there. They're still technically based in Texas now, but they do have some big facilities over there. And I also want to note that this in turn was just announced by the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and Elon Musk. Once again, say what you want about these individuals, but the bottom line is California is still a state that's helping Tesla to some degree, as we're seeing EVs becoming increasingly popular over there. That's part of why Elon Musk is still, shaking hands with governors on either side of the political aisle. I think that's a good thing about him, and I do appreciate the work Musk continues to do. Now, even though I haven't really seen Musk tweet too much on Twitter about Tesla, at least as of recently, I still believe that he's doing a great job in the back end, and he's sometimes getting underrated despite it. And I don't want to trivialize the work he has done. Like I said before, we still appreciate it. Now, Tesla Model S and X were spotted with new hardware 4.0 suite of cameras. Once again, new cameras is just incredible. I actually know people that got into an accident recently and they really needed cameras around their car, and having a Tesla once again could help you with many difficulties like that. Now, when it comes to Tesla in terms of a share price, I want to note that the volume is declining just a little bit. It's a little bit below average, just slightly at 191 million. Not too bad overall. We are up about 1.8% above the 200 level. And I want to note that overall, the short volume percentage has declined big time, which means that we did see an increase in the buying pressure. At least buying did play a big role today. We didn't see as much heavy shorting, and we did actually see potentially some shorts close their positions to some degree. This is part of the reason why we are seeing the overall short interest on Tesla declining to some degree. It's been declining over the last couple of days. A lot of the shorts are just starting to cover their positions, maybe securing some profits, and they're getting ready to actually re-enter at different positions, in my opinion. Now, what I also want to note about this is that the shorting in Tesla as of right now is not heavily dictating the stock. When the shorts come out and they become very aggressive and they start buying the puts, that could actually bring Tesla down even harder. We're not seeing that right now. It could happen in the future. And I do believe they're just patiently waiting because there is still lots of hype as we get closer to Investor Day. So they're just patiently waiting. We will see how that ends up going. So just be very patient. I also want to note that Thursdays are historically not the best of days for Tesla. We're only green about 48% of the time, but Tesla was red for a large part of like Tuesday. So after that big red day on Tuesday, we're only slightly green today. There is still an increased probability of us trying to get the green. We have to break some major resistance levels in order to get there, though. I also want to note that Tesla did outperform in the market today. The price pairs ratio is still at this high level, which means that Tesla is still showing some relative strength, and there is good potential for that to happen tomorrow. I also want to note that we weren't hit with any like really bad pieces of news, so the news is likely not going to cause Tesla to crash unless something really big comes out tomorrow, which I'm not really seeing so far. It's going to depend more on the data. So now the question is, what's going on with the markets? What could we actually say? SPY is in the middle right now. It's in the middle of a major support and resistance level. The major resistance on SPY is 401 now. It actually lowered because the bears are gaining the edge, and it's going to take a lot. We're going to need some very powerful data to push this thing above 401. It is still possible. Now, if you're bearish, though, you have to watch this 397 area. We barely held that today. We got a nice bounce off of it, but if we fail right there, this thing could easily come all the way down to like 395, 393, then get a retest of the descending broadening wedge resistance, which happens to be around 393. Right now, like I said, it really is just stuck in the middle. It's going to depend heavily on the data tomorrow. My guess is we might see the market kind of gap down a bit and maybe try to get a small bounce. It is still possible. I'm still going to be very cautious regardless of that. And we did barely close down like 0.14%, not too significant. But I think the market's more likely to just chop around a bit tomorrow and maybe get a bigger move going into Friday as PCE is coming out. For the triple Q, we have major resistance between 297 and then 298, and then we have 300 and 304. Those are the three major resistance levels, but we do have some major resistance though, particularly around 298. And then 294 is kind of in the middle. We did try to hold about this 292.5 area. If that fails, it could come all the way down to 290, then the 287 zone. So QQQ is also just dead in the middle, waiting for some data to come out. My guess would be this thing might actually try to hold tomorrow. We could even see a somewhat green close. I'm trying to predict that. I don't know for sure though, but that's just my 2 cents. I'm saying that because of NVIDIA. We had a pretty decent earnings and might try to hold the market up. It may try to push the market up to some degree. And I do think it's very possible we're going to either hold these levels or maybe try to push up just a little bit tomorrow in preparation of the PCE report. The VIX, on the other hand, has two possibilities. It might either come down to fill this gap and then bounce, or it might just continue to push up. Either way, I do believe the VIX has more upside coming over the next couple of weeks, and I do believe this will happen because of the market coming down. The market has more downside coming very soon. This is going to likely help the VIX break those high resistance levels around the 24, 25, 27 area. Now, I also want to note that for Apple, it's holding up all right. It's actually stuck in the middle between two gaps. There's one above here that it hasn't filled around the 152 level. There's also another one down here around this 145 level. So it's in the middle right now. It's currently at almost 149. If this thing gets a nice push up, it has to try to break 150. That's some major resistance right now. Apple looks like it might try to do that. Once again, it depends on the data though. It might try to break 150, maybe push up to fill this gap and then continue to come down. That is a possibility. It looks like it was trying to respect an uptrend today, so it is very possible it tries that. On the dollar, however, the dollar is continuing to get stronger and stronger and pushing up for that 105 area. What this tells me is this: the dollar might come down a little bit. Maybe the market pushes up because of that, just temporarily. But I'm just saying temporarily. I'm not saying forever. But regardless of that, I see the dollar eventually continuing to break all the way up to this 105 area and push and push and push. It's either going to continue to do that now or it's going to come down first and then do that. But either way, the dollar is screaming. The market has more downside to come over the next couple of weeks, going into March, maybe even as soon as like April. Who knows if it's going to last that long? It probably will. There's more downside to come as the dollar is screaming. I also want to note that the 10-year Treasury yield came down just a little bit. It was hit with some major resistance. I mentioned this right over here. I'm seeing two possibilities, very similar to the dollar and the VIX. This thing is either going to just fly and just keep going up and up and up, which will bring the market down. Remember, this is inversely correlated with the market. Or this thing might come down first to fill this gap around this 38 level, which means the stock market could push up a little bit during that time frame, and then later on it gets a nice bounce and starts pushing up, and the market ends up coming down. So I hope that's clear. The stock market's either going to just straight up crash from this point, or the market's going to get a small rebound, a small bounce before it continues to crash. It's got to be one of those two most likely. I don't want to use the word crash. I don't think the market's just going to get a violent slap super quickly. I think it's going to take some time because we're waiting on some big data and also PCE, which is coming out on Friday. Now for Tesla, let's talk about Tesla, the big dog. What are we seeing on Tesla? Tesla got a nice close. Tesla actually closed above the 200 level. It's up almost 2% for the day. But the problem is when you zoom out of the chart, it's continuing to make lower highs and lower lows. It's continuing to respect that trend. You could see right here, the high was around the 215, 217 area. It came all the way down to about 196. Then it gets a bounce. The next high is around 210, comes all the way down to 191 after that. So that's the lower low it made. Then it pushes up, gets stopped around 200. That's a lower high. So there's a downtrend that's being respected. The trend, it does look more on the bearish side. However, from a technical standpoint, it's telling us that Tesla's likely going to come down and maybe start to retest this lower level, but we could get an interference in the price action. Interferences could happen that actually change technicals. And I'm saying this because of NVIDIA's earnings and also depending on the data for tomorrow. So if you're bullish, if you are bullish on Tesla, we first have to break this resistance right over here around this 200 area. Then we have to break all the way up to 205. I do think Tesla could try to get a break to these levels, but it is struggling a bit. It did get smacked a bit today. So I'm not seeing this as being the most likely possibility, but it is still very possible. Then there's also 209 and 215 as major resistance. If Tesla comes down, if Tesla gets a downtrend, you have to watch this 198-ish level. If it comes below that, then we have quite a bit of room to go to about 194, almost around that area. That's where Tesla has some support. Then we also have more support around this. I'm watching like this 189 to 187 area. There's some pretty strong support over there. If that somehow fails, you have to watch 185. All right. So remember that those numbers, the main support zone is around 187 to 189. Below that, we have 185. Above that, we have 193. 193 to 194, like that zone right there. So what am I seeing on Tesla? What's going on with the share price? It is still respecting this trend. And overall, from a technical standpoint, it looks like this is a little bit more on the bearish side. But Tesla could get a breakout if the numbers that come out tomorrow from initial jobless claims and also the GDP numbers are what the market wants. So my prediction would be into like the after hours going into like pre-market, Tesla's likely going to respect this trend and be a little bit in the red. And then I believe that we might try to break out into open. We might gap down in the beginning, then try to break and retest the top right here. And I'm thinking that if the trend continues, the market might come down. We could see Tesla end up coming all the way down to this like 190 level, maybe 189 or so, get a bit of a bounce off of that, and then continue to push. And we might actually see it try to get to this 200 area. If it breaks 200, if we manage to get a clean break and hold above the 200 zone, if that happens tomorrow, this thing could fly to 205. That is a possibility, but I'm going to be very cautious when trying to make that call. I do believe it's going to continue to respect this falling wedge that we've been kind of like stuck in for quite a while. I do think it's going to do that tomorrow, but once again, it does also depend on the data. My prediction, once again, is we're going to likely see a bit of a maybe gap down, a slight drop on Tesla later on as the day goes on. We might push up in the beginning, then come down like this, right? This drop I'm talking about to this 189 level, maybe 189 to 188 around there, get a bounce off of that, push up, and try to get close to this 200 area. And if Tesla breaks it, if it ends up showing lots of strength, it could try to fly to about 205. It is possible. We just have to wait and see how well it actually does to call that. But I am predicting a move something very similar to that. And I do believe that Tesla is still showing some, internal strength. It still has some relative strength. It might try to get to about 205 by the time we close tomorrow. It could try it. We just have to wait and see. But that's what I'm basically predicting, guys. I do think Tesla's going to still try to hold these levels by the time it closes. I don't think it's going to close way too red or like way too green. I think it will come down a little bit tomorrow, but it should bounce back and try to close very close to where we are right now. That's what I'm basically predicting. Please, please, please be very careful and watch the levels very carefully as the day goes on. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Tesla to the moon because the long term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.